return to, well, what else is there to talk about today? Actually, the general election taking place on the 4th of July.
Well, after speaking to him, we can get the thoughts of former Culture Secretary and Boris Johnson loyalist Nadine Dorries. Good to see you this morning, Nadine. I'm not sure if you heard the Prime Minister speaking to us about half an hour ago, but if you did, it would be good to get your reaction to that interview and, of course, your response to that date we have now, the 4th of July.
I didn't hear the interview. Apologies for that. So my thoughts on the date of the 4th of July, I think it was obviously a calculated decision to go for the snap election to be announced yesterday. I think one of the main reasons for that has to have been the fact, the big question everyone was asking last night was why? And I think the answer to that question is because no one was listening anymore to anything that Rishi Sunak was saying or the party was saying, and the decline in the polls was continuing. And I think that, the decision must have been taken. Do we save the party from annihilation and just win badly? And I think that was the point they got to, because if we'd continued in power with Rishi Sunak, because it's Rishi the voters aren't in love with. They still want conservatism, they still want conservative principles. It's the Prime Minister which is the issue, and his personal poll ratings actually tell us that. So I think if we just continued, it would have just got worse and worse. And so I think what they did yesterday was decide we'll just win badly, we'll just lose badly, rather than the party actually being completely annihilated. We were facing a prospect with some polling, I don't know if you remember, about 6 weeks ago, where we'd be returning after a general election with something like 6 MPs. So we're getting into pretty dangerous territory. So I think what happened yesterday probably had to happen. It was stop them.
Yeah, but that polling saying six MPs, that was based on the local election results, which of course never translate into a general election. But you say people are.
Having said that, the local, and you're quite right to point that out, because the local election results, they didn't take place in Scotland, where we're actually predicted to do far worse than we're doing in England. So I think if they were extrapolated out across the UK, if those local election results were extrapolated out, it would probably have shown us to be in an even worse position.
Yes, but well, perhaps. But the issue is, it's not right to say, is it, that people just don't want Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister. People are, the polls would suggest that people, and it's not surprising after 14 years, that people are just ready for a change of government, aren't they? Almost regardless of what Labour is standing for, because we haven't got the details yet. We need to wait for now to get the full details through. But people are just ready for a change after effectively 14 years of Conservative rule.
No, I don't think that's the case at all, actually, because this is in 97. The public aren't crying out for Tony Blair. They're not in love with Labour. They're not passionate about Labour's policies because they don't actually really know what they are. Even Wes Streeting couldn't remember their own 6 pledges the other day. So it's not like, during the local elections, it wasn't a case of like it was in 97 when people were saying, no, had enough of Tories, it's time to give Labour a go. That isn't the situation we have today. So, if you were here, this conversation was taking place, in 1997, I'd agree with you, but it's not the case. Keir Starmer doesn't ignite the country the way Tony Blair did. This is an election for Labour to lose, actually, because the people are not screaming out for Labour, and which is why I think that what many people will do in this election is that they will just stay at home. Labour will possibly win by default, because it'll be like 2005 and 2005, where I think 35% of people stayed at home. It's going to be kind of like not people going out and voting for Labour. It's going to be people just voting with their feet and staying at home and saying none of the above. It isn't that Labour are doing well. Labour don't have a plan.
But forgive me, why would that be any different if, say, Boris Johnson had still been in power now? Obviously he did very well in 2019, but it almost became a single-issue election then. It was about Brexit, and he promised to deliver. Now, in the wake of what has happened since, even Boris Johnson wouldn't be as popular now as he was in 2019.
On the day Boris Johnson was removed from power, we were 2 to 4 points behind in the polls. One poll had us at 2 points. The worst case scenario was at 4 points. That was the day he was removed from power as Prime Minister. And I think many Tory MPs will be reflecting on that today as they launch into their election campaigns. 21, I think one poll had us 26 points behind yesterday. So, we will never know because he's not there and he was removed 2 years ago, but it is worth reflecting on where the party was on the day he was removed as Prime Minister. And I've always said that even if we fell to 6, 7, 8 points behind in the polls, that's the kind of deficit that could have been burnt away in a general election campaign when Boris Johnson was on the trail, because there's a big difference between Boris Johnson, Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak. And that is that he is a campaigner and a winner, and both of those men are not. So you're going to have the most boring election campaign coming up with two leaders of two parties who just are not campaigners. They don't win. They don't know how to win elections, against Boris Johnson, who had won the Mayor of London twice, who won massive in 2019 and was an absolute campaigner. So, you haven't got that this time. It's not there. And you say, it was a one election issue in 2019. I don't think many people go to the polls based on one issue. Obviously, Brexit was a factor, but no one actually, people care about things like education and schools and how safe their streets are and a lot of other things too. So I think it's wrong to say it was a one issue election, but you had the best campaigner we've known for a generation in politics and he just isn't there.
I'm very interested in what you were saying about people staying at home on polling day on the 4th of July, sitting on their hands. You're not a fan of Rishi Sunak, you're not a fan of Sir Keir Starmer either. Who will you be voting for on the 4th of July? Will you be voting at all?
So I vote Conservative. I'm one of those, I believe fundamentally in Conservative principles and the principles of Conservatives and always have done. It's why I'm, from my own background, from a Liverpool council estate, it's why I'm a Conservative MP and why I was a Conservative MP. So yes, I'll be voting Conservative. I couldn't put my cross next to any other party. So I'll be voting. And I think, there'll be a hard choice for a lot of Conservative Party members I know to make who are very angry about what happened to Boris Johnson. And I know their inclination is not to vote at this election. And what I would say is that people are talking about rebuilding the Conservative Party. In order to rebuild it, it needs to exist. And I know for some members who've always voted Conservative all of their life, it's a difficult choice. They want to stay at home and they don't want to go out. They want to show the party how they feel about what the party did to the Prime Minister that they elected and they chose. And what I would say is, when the day comes, try to put those feelings aside and go out and vote Conservative, because the party needs to be rebuilt. And if it doesn't exist, that won't be possible.